Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this Thursday night at 8 o'clock Central, where we are every Thursday night. If my voice sounds different, that's because I am not Sean Sellers. Sean Sellers is in San Diego this week, and me and Hump and James and Dustin are kind of sitting around filling in for him.
Winging it.
We're winging it. Everybody who's present, I just addressed. We got right now Dustin, James, Hump, myself. I'm going to go ahead and do the shout-outs as we normally do. Got Lord Chaz in New Orleans, Laura in Hansville, Kevin in Louisiana, Barbie in Smith Station, Sharon Johnson in Tallahassee Library, Chip Coffee Eek, Jar and her sister, Karen, Pam, Janet, Diane, Justin, Joe, Frankie and his wife, Tim from Darkness Radio, Ryan and Katrina from Paranormal State, Callie, Kirk, Index Case, Tina, Baz, everybody that attended SPR-Con, of course. Maybe we'll have us another one. I'm definitely need to thank Shay and people that I forgot. Anyway, if you'd like to call in, the number is 646-652-2547, or you can always ask questions through the chat room. You can check out our website at www.southernparanormalresearchers.org, where we have an online store with a lot of great offers such as DVDs and T-shirts. If you'd like to email us, please do so at southernparanormalresearchers@yahoo.com, or you can always call us on the hotline, or just, the phone we keep for you to call us at 334-695-7748. And, if you want to help Pump out during his day, you can always add us on the MySpace page. It's MySpace Gangster. He loves that.
Strong and paranormal.
Wow. And before we get any further, got to read the disclaimer. This radio show is treated as an open forum for discussion in which censorship of information and ideas is greatly discouraged. As such, different ideas, beliefs, and information is presented and discussed in ways some may find offensive. Our goal is to present sometimes obscure or sensitive information in a new and entertaining light so that the minds of our listeners will be left engaged and enlightened. In short, please remember that these are our opinions. We do not take ourselves too seriously, so neither should you. That being said and done, we've got a great show coming up tonight. We'll have Brad Steiger calling in as our guest. I've looked up to him for about a year now. It's ever since I heard him for the first time on Coast to Coast. Really prolific writer. He's got over 160 books in various subjects, a lot of which being in the paranormal. The man is actually co-authored with his wife and pretty much an encyclopedia of the paranormal. I've been scanning over that a little bit today. And, if you guys really want to have sort of a one-stop shop as far as anything you might run across paranormal-wise, definitely check it out. It's the Gale Encyclopedia of the Unusual and Unexplained. David Humphrey?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I also want to thank everybody for befriending us on our MySpace page. Don't forget to check out southernparanormalresearchers.org. Also, if you're in the Montgomery area, don't forget to check out Rex on the Radio, Y102 Montgomery. You can go to y102montgomery.com, where we're going to do a special contest Halloween night, live investigation with Y102 and Southern Paranormal Researchers. Email them telling them why you would like to go on an investigation with us. It's going to be a great contest. There's a lot of surprises that are going to be put out with it that night. It's going to be a great time in a special location, and I'm telling you, please don't miss an opportunity to go on a live investigation with us. That's Rex on the Radio, y102montgomery.com. Also, check them out. You can also check their radio show out through your computer by logging on. It's streamed live. And also, don't forget to befriend us and everybody with Southern Paranormal on our MySpace page.
Thank you, David Humphrey. As you heard, please be sure to, if you want to enter the contest, to contact Y102 and not us. Unfortunately, we don't have much say in it. We're just kind of the band. We show up, we play. It's their rules. So please keep that in mind. We've had a lot going on. We had Buena Vista. We're still getting a lot of good feedback on Buena Vista. I just messed it up in Sean's name. There you go. Buena Vista. Buena Vista. There you go. First time it's ever been pronounced correctly on this radio show. We got Buena Vista. I guess we're going to have to eventually do another one with them or something because we've had a lot of feedback.
How many people did show up?
We had, I think, over 120 show up for Buena Vista, and that's 4 separate shifts. We accommodated everybody we could. It was absolutely out of control. It was great. It was great. It's a very fun night, had by all. We had a poor little girl that had a little too much of a good time, it seems. I think they found out that we were concerned because we thought maybe she had drugs in her system because she kind of went out on us and we ended up having to call the paramedics for her. I think they said that due to some sort of body chemistry she has, that drinking 1 beer was like drinking 3 for her. So I think she had 4 shots of tequila, so you times that by 3, so that's 12 shots of tequila, and that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sure does. I believe David Humphrey was there live for it. So David, you want to comment on it?
Wow, yeah, the little girl, I think she had just a little bit too much to drink, but she's okay now. We have talked to her, and everything's all right. She went to the hospital. But let's talk on some other things about Buena Vista. It's been absolutely an amazing week with Y102 and us, the investigations, the people that come out, and the response, and the hype over that investigation that weekend. Y102 is blown up with emails, questions, phone calls. Our Southern Paranormal Researchers page has blown up. MySpace. People, if you live in the Montgomery area, check it out. Send a letter why you want to go on the investigation with us. Halloween night. It's going to be a great time.
And remember, I don't think we're reviewing are we reviewing the letters to pick them, David Humphrey?
We are not picking the winners. Y102 is doing that.
So don't offer to bring cheeseburgers or anything?
Yeah. You cannot buy us. You cannot buy us. We can't give you a T-shirt to go.
If you offer something good enough, we might schedule one just for you. But that might be possible.
Wow. Yeah, we can arrange that.
It might. Wow. We won't say what that is. We'll leave that up to your imagination and see what we get. Wow.
Let's see what kind of response. Seriously, let's see what kind of response we can get on that. I'm really curious. As to what kind of response we can get for that. Here's a new contest. Send the reason that you want to go. This is completely separate. We're going to do a completely different investigation.
Are you sure?
Yes. I'm setting this up. We're going to do a different investigation.
Director James Kirkley has spoken. Apparently he has all say over matters like that.
I do now, David.
Wow. I mean, it would be fun to see what people would do, but wow. What would you do for a Klondike bar? There you go. Bad.
No, seriously, on a serious note, this is going to be a great opportunity. I'm very fired up over it. We really can't say where we're going, can we, yet? Do they already know? The special Halloween night investigation with Y102.
I think you've already said it twice.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now. Buena Vista in Prattville, Alabama.
If we weren't supposed to do that, we're sorry.
No, it's out.
It's out, whatever.
Yeah.
But we had a great time at Buena Vista. As far as I know, everybody kind of was able to get what they wanted out of it. I haven't heard too many complaints of you.
No, absolutely.
You know, so I'm pretty proud of that. Pretty proud of the team. Worked out very well. We tried doing some of the ghost box sessions over there just to see what we get with the random people. And I've had a few people cry on me.
We had a couple of.
It worked out very well. What I found the most surprising was people kept saying, well, that sounds just like, whoever they were talking to, which is kind of fun considering it's just stray radio signals. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
A very recognizable voice.
You kept hearing a very recognizable voice, James. Well, the director over here just told me.
The new director.
Wow. James Kirkley, director of SPR. Shawn, don't even bother coming back from San Diego, brother. He's got it.
doing all kind of contests.
Wow.
We're starting over. We're doing all kind of contests. We're going to do big things.
We'll pack your kids in a crate and ship them to San Diego.
In a crate?
In a crate.
That's a little silly.
Yeah, it is. I'm kidding. But
at least put it back.
Yeah. And we also have, speaking at, I believe it's the Governor Square Library.
Yeah.
Do you have a few more details on that?
Yes, I do, Jake. Southern paranormal researcher Shawn Sellers was invited to talk to the Montgomery County Library Thursday, October 30th. I believe it's at 6:30, 7 o'clock. It's a public invite. What's so funny about this is when me and Shawn were little, we lived in the Normandale area, and every Halloween, that was the biggest thing in the world, to go to the library for the whole week of Halloween. They had different skits, plays, Halloween stuff, movies, 13 Alabama Ghost. That was a big thing for us in elementary school, to run up to the library that week. And now to see Shawn and Southern Paranormal Researchers go there and put on a presentation is unbelievable. It's awesome. We sent some bulletins out for MySpace. Go back and check them out if you're on MySpace. I believe Marty, Shelley, and them had pushed it, Beth Ann, and I want to thank everybody for pushing the bulletins. It means a lot, and I'm glad that we're reaching out to a lot of people in not only the Tri-County areas, but throughout the state. But it's a great honor for Shawn to be there to put on this presentation and to promote Southern Paranormal Researchers at Halloween, where actually that's one of the places where Shawn talks about how we all started it out. Well, the public libraries was where we did it.
That's cool, man. While we're kind of done with announcements for right now, I'm going to have Mr. Dustin Webster.
It's Dustin time.
Who's not paying attention at all. But I believe you got a story for us that sounded pretty crazy. So go ahead and read that, and we'll talk about it for a minute.
All right, I found this just one of these little free newspapers you get at the grocery store. Somebody brought into work. I snagged it up and just happened to look through it. And all those crazy satanic gangs are at it again overseas in Russia. And the headline of this story is, Satanic Gang Arrested After Roasting and Eating 4 Teenagers. Now, this does have a little graphics involved to it, so I want to say that if you get a little squeamish, then turn your volume down, but never away. Here we go. It says, Russia police have arrested 8 members of a satanic gang over the murder of, and I'm going to butcher the crap out of these Russian names, so have to forgive me on that one. Over the murders of Andrei Sorkin, Anya Gorokova, Olga Prokova, and a really long name with a lot of consonants and not enough vowels, so I'm going to skip that one. In an area approximately 300 miles northwest of Moscow, it is thought that the victims knew their murderers. The 4 teens were plied with alcohol before they were stabbed 666 times and had their hearts, genitalia, breasts, and limbs removed. The gang roasted and ate some of the meat as part of a ritual and buried the remains under an inverted cross. The murders happened in the middle of last year, but the remains only came to light last month. Police were able to connect the murdered teens to their attackers using phone records. Now, that's to me, that's just crazy. I mean, how far are you willing to go for this, where you go kill your supposed friends and then eat them? All part of a really elaborate Halloween prank. That was a Halloween prank. Somebody's trying to get closer to their uncool angel.
Wow. Well, all right. Hump, I guess if you'll go ahead and put on our recently deposed director.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit with him about it if he heard that.
Is he an investigator now?
Shawn, you there, man?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm kind of hungry now, man.
Wow.
What do y'all do,
James just completely took over. He pulled a power move while you were gone.
Oh, my God. Man. Well, Mr. Incredible Man, he can do that every now and then, I guess.
Hey, Shawn.
Yes, sir.
Question, man. I just posed the suggestion that we do another contest, just among us, and see what we can get. We do a personal investigation with someone if they offer the right stuff.
A little uncomfortable silence. Everyone involved.
Wow.
Boy, y'all ready tonight, man. You know, what Dustin was saying, actually the other night we watched something about that, actually, regards to cannibalism and a lot of the vampires and those type of murders and stuff that follow those cults. And, that's pretty out there. That pretty much tells you the lengths that people would actually go to try to reach that mysticism, to get a taste of that dark side and get a taste of that mystical power. And people really don't realize the power of it comes from the power of the mind and soul. And I think this goes to all these measures, and they pretty much they do it. It's a type of possession. They're completely not them anymore.
Yeah, it's speaking of the whole cannibal thing, what were we watching? Arwen Weiss? I'm sorry, I'm going to mess that name up, but that was the guy in Germany that met a guy over the message board, I believe, that wanted to be killed and eaten, and he obliged him. That was a really tense court case over in Germany for a while because, if he really wanted it, is he guilty? And I believe they ended up convicting him of murder, and he's in prison for life right now.
It took place in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that correct?
What's that?
It took place in Germany, didn't it?
Yes, it was in Germany.
Wow, that's one of those cases that's absolutely incredible. And some of the things that we talked about, I thought it would be cool in the near future to do some of our radio shows and talk about some of these serial killers and some of the strange things behind it,
It is something that could definitely be a decent radio show. I'll say that. Well, I mean, and since it's internet radio, we can kind of get as graphic as we want with the details.
Yeah, and the whole thing is related to mental illness. Is it some type of some type of entity that's causing that, fueling that? Is it demonic? Some of that stuff is just pure evil, or is it to the point that somebody's just that power hungry and that wants to reach the mystical heights such as that? So many little different things that we could share that show and talk about a lot of the strange things connected to it as well.
There's a lot of people that actually subscribe to a theory that, they use the serial killers as a reference, saying that, look at them and look at what they did. There's no such thing as demons. We just invented that so that we could comprehend, man's inhumanity to man that way.
Yeah.
But then again, you can always flip it and say, well, look what they did. That's inhuman.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very, very strange. It's definitely a very strange psychological profile.
It is, man. And that TV show was actually all watching was something like Most Evil, where the guy actually rates them, and he used a scale where he rates them similar to their background, to the type of mental abuse, and then he also relates. And normally you can trace them back to some type of childhood trauma, something like that. But there's other kids that really don't scale at all. That's absolutely unexplainable. Why they do that? They can't really trace it to anything. I think it's one of the ones that stood out with him. One of the episodes I saw was Ted Bundy. Really didn't have any childhood trauma or anything that really caused him to be the way he was, except just a closeness with his mother.
Right. A lot of these serial killers do have some sort of thing that happens with their mom. Not necessarily their dad so much, but it's some sort of almost Oedipal complex. It's something that you can trace back to a lot of things. I think there's what's called the Trinity, which is the unholy trinity or something like that they use in the profiling, which is bedwetting past a certain age, animal torture, or complete meanness towards other kids at some point, and arson. Yeah, and
I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm sorry, man.
So who do we call about, Jay?
Wow. I guess you can call some of your cop friends there. Wow. But, man. So, going back to this cult in Russia, it's kind of funny you don't really think of modern times people doing that anymore. But they're underground. People run into them every now and then. They're still functioning in the United States. It just isn't advertised. It just isn't everywhere. Police departments keep it pretty shut up.
Well, Jay, I hate to interrupt you, but think about this. Malachi Martin talked about it, and let's go even through our experience. How many actually covens is out there? How many actually cults is really out there that we came across since we've done this? I can think of several, and the people that's involved, and it's really concerning. It kind of makes you wonder, and it also falls in effect to what people are spiritually searching for. And when they want to make a connection, they want to fall into a group that they feel like they fit in and can contribute to. They also want to get back at all the hurt and all the things they have built in. And a lot of the people that we come across is suffering somehow socially and mentally too as well. We've come across several, since we've been involved in this for a long time, and Malachi Martin talks about it in one of his interviews as well.
Right. It's amazing when you get a group that's that close-knit, how if you let the kind of group mind that starts up here get twisted enough, what these people will do just because they're in a group, like how mobs form and the whole sociology of it, of, that cult mind that tends to get together when you have people with enough, with a certain situation.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean, especially doing ritual work.
Yeah, definitely. Even through some of the things that some of the organizations we belong in, the Freemasonry and stuff, the power of the ritual stuff is just that belief. The true ritual stuff is that belief, repeating the same thing that people's done over and over, your forefathers, your families, a strong belief system, and all you're doing is conjuring and pulling that energy together through your rituals and stuff. And if you have people really know how to do that, it can be some dangerous stuff, some of the things that's being done nowadays.
Right, if you start using it. If you start using it for bad purposes.
But, you really don't have to use it for bad purposes. Think about all these people that get these books and they read it and they say, oh, I'm a witch and I'm going to start a coven. And then they start opening these doors, or these other people that grab these books, like the Necronomicon, whatever you call it, and they start climbing doing these spells without any belief system, without any firm foundation. They read these books, they claim they're this, they break out all their stuff, their candles, all their work. Only thing they're doing is pretty much undressing themselves, stepping into the earthly plane and say, attack me, attack me, attack me, attack me. Whether or not you go into it openly to a point where you say, well, you know what, I'm going to do this because, I want to learn, and all this stuff. But really, they open themselves up, whether or not they have good intentions or not, to be attacked, playing with things they have no idea what they're playing with.
Right. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how much tradition and preparation goes into doing it for real, especially with the Necronomicon spells, if you believe they're real or not. And a lot of the old Hermetic magic, which that seems to be kind of based on, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. And if you just pick up a book and read it, you don't necessarily get that. You don't get that mentor apprentice approach where you're taught how to carry yourself, how to pronounce words, how to put together your protective garments, your protective ring, things like that. People don't quite understand how you have to have that firm foundation and things before you start going into this. You're being spiritual, right, but with what?
The best protection you can have is that faith in God and keep that white light around you as well too. Anything you do, you've got to begin with a prayer, and you've got to begin with that firm foundation of reaffirming your belief system and strengthening it, and then you go from that point on to do this stuff. And a lot of the way we do our cleanses and stuff is ritualistic and kind of out there in some ways. At the same time, we use our belief system as well to reinforce that. And I think that's something that helps us, and I think that's one of the biggest things in our field today. Is so many people are jumping into it, and they're in the covens. They're not really schooled, and they're just causing more harm than they are helping people.
Definitely, and you really have to be careful of what you buy into as well. If you get someone that's megalomaniacal enough or is depraved quite enough, they'll just make up stuff and lead you in a certain way. And there's no telling what's in them when they're doing this ritual work that's going to leak itself into you. You have to be very careful who you choose to associate yourself with when you're doing anything spiritual. I mean, especially if you get on the right path, because you're going to have a lot more flack, a lot more things trying to get you off.
you really got to be careful too. People just can't fool themselves that you're not going to just meet somebody in a year's time and say, you know what, you're going to be my teacher and I'm going to teach you everything that was passed down traditionally. It just don't work that way, Now, you can really educate yourself, be smart, and say, you know what, I'm a teacher now, and you start teaching people, but people need to take that in effect. When you start learning from other people, you really got to take in effect who that person is, look what they're doing productively, really look with who they're helping, where they're at spiritually, where they're at personally, where they're at every aspect of their life, and then look how well you know them. Because if you're not just going to pick average Joe off the streets, I'm going to teach you something very important to me and something that was passed down through generation. It's just not done that way, Yeah,
normally you're going to start off with a very, very formal relationship with that person. You have to seek them out and you have to prove your worth. And the whole process, ideally taught, takes years and years. It's not something you can go buy a book, get a Ouija board, slap it down, get some candles from Walmart, and go to town. You have to put a lot of effort and a lot of time into it. And that's, just like with our field, you have to, you can't read a few books and be an expert. And that's something our guest says, and there is no experts in this field. It's still theoretical for the most part. This isn't something you can get a degree in. There's just so many facets of it. That really extends into all things. You have to put effort and time into something for it to be worth anything.
Well, I'm excited about the guest tonight. I really hate I can't be there. It's a great opportunity. And I know, Jake, you're a big fan, and he should. What time will Brad be calling in?
Should be about 8:30.
Wow. That's something I really hate. I won't miss it. I can't wait to catch the archives on that. And I know you're prepared well, and you're going to do a great job interviewing everybody there. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. And I'm going to be this weekend. Actually, I plan on going to the Whaley House to visit, and actually take a couple of haunted tours on Saturdays. So we can talk about that probably some next Thursday as well. Kind of add and make the show a little bit.
Try not to be the creepy drunk guy too much for me, will you? There by himself.
You know what? No, I'm not going to be that one. And I'm definitely not going to be the guy that shows up with my paranormal T-shirt on, flip-flops, and blue jeans and start handing out my cards to all the people that come on the tour. I'm not going to be that guy either.
Hey, Shawn, try not to be that same guy that you were in Charleston, picking on the tour guide. If they mess up on one thing, Shawn, just let them go.
Well, if I know more than a tour guide, something's wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? I just want people to be historically correct. They're going to do the tour. If I take time about the tour I'm going to be on, I expect that tour guide to do the same thing.
Well, Shawn, we all understand that you are smarter than 90% of the tour guys that do these haunted tours. But come on, man, just be easy with them. They're trying to do a job, man.
Well, I'm definitely going to be nice because I won't be partaking any of that great elixir down here probably for that because I'll be by myself. So I'll definitely be a lot nicer than normal.
Okay. Just trying not to creep nobody out, man.
But that's kind of hard for me to do.
I want you to be that old guy in the corner.
Don't pull up in the mystery machine to go take your tour, man. Jeez.
Oh man, I'll try not to creep nobody out, guys. Definitely won't. Well,
so his clown suit's missing. He wants to know if you borrowed his panel van to drive to San Diego.
Oh, tell him to let me get it back to the airport. I'll bring it back to him.
You need to get a new one anyway, huh?
Okay.
Wow.
Because I was really debating about leaving it once I'm done with it here.
Oh. Yeah, didn't we say we weren't going to go there tonight? Oh, well.
Oh, it's okay to go there, man. It's all over the place. But goodness gracious. But, we've got a big week coming up next week. We've got a lot of exciting things to talk about. Wow, man, I'm excited about everything. This past weekend, everything's just been great. I think we're moving in the right direction. I got a little things. I actually went to a seminar today, and it's actually, I kind of related to one of the classes I went to our group and the direction we're going and how our leaders is going to be and how I want us to be. And we're going to talk about that some next week as well. And I'm not mistaken, I think we might even have a guest next week.
Will we? Do you know who it will be yet?
It's the guy that's connected to the Rosicrucians.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
We'll have to get all that.
You'll be back next week, huh? So you tell us.
I will be back next week. I'll be back on Sunday.
Well, just remember that you're demoted to an investigator now.
Now who demoted me?
That'd be Mr. James Kirkley.
Okay. All right.
Technically, hold on, Shawn. Technically, Jake and Hump demoted you because they went ahead and promoted me to director. I was just suggesting that we have a contest.
He's being all innocent with you over the phone because he completely took over here.
Well, I can tell you what, if any of y'all can do a better job than I can do, y'all can go ahead and have it, man. Y'all roll with it, brothers.
Wow.
Hey, Shawn.
I don't think nobody wants to be in your shoes.
Not at all. Yeah, now he's looking at another tune. He said, not at all.
Because I'll be honest with you, I would kind of enjoy sitting back and watching y'all drive the bus for a change.
You've been driving a short bus for too long, have you?
And the short bus is filling up, man. It's filling up, so somebody else can drive it a little bit.
Wow.
But, you know,
well, I mean,
so you're Bill Gates now. You're just going to step back and let somebody else run the business?
Absolutely. That's what y'all want to do, man. That's what y'all want to do. But
wow.
You know what? On a serious tip, real fast, is Brad on the line yet?
No, sir, not yet. We'll let you know. Trust me, we'll let you know.
You know, one of the things that we all talked about a lot about how our group's doing things. You know, even some of the people in the bigger groups, and y'all being a small town, y'all do a great job. You know what?
Wow. Small timers, man. We just gotta band together and.
I really thought about that. You know how bad when those comments are made, how it's affected me. And after I thought about it, the class I went to, some of the things that really matters for our team and really matters to me. And, that's something that I've been preaching, something, Jake, you do a great job and I know Hump and James and everybody else starting to fall in, especially Marty and everybody else is coming on board in what we're doing. And when Stacy's there and all of us working together, number one that we've done well and we're going to continue to do is that consistency. We've always been consistent in what we're doing. You're going to get the same thing every time we're there. No matter what's happening to us in our personal life as friends, when we come to a job, you're going to get consistency. Whether it's speaking, whether it's an investigation, you're going to get consistency with us. Number two, when you deal with us, you're going to always get clarity. We're going to explain to you what you're dealing with. We're going to find out the answers to your questions, and we're going to help you out. We've always done that, and something we're always going to continue to do that. Something else that we have sincere compassion toward everybody we work with, we speak with, and every job we do, no matter what it is. And that's something else that we consistent. Always have compassion.
I think Mr. Steiger just joined the line, so we're going to try and get him on.
Well, you know what, guys? Y'all go ahead and get him on. Y'all have a good one, and y'all holler at me.
All right, man.
Bye.
Okay. Let's see. Hold up here just a minute. All right. Caller, are you there? Hello? Caller, are you there? Oh, looks like and they just dropped off.
Oh, no.
Man.
No,
You never can tell with this group. We're eventually just going to have to invest in a server and start shoutcasting, I guess.
Yeah.
Poor old Blog Talk. But, on a serious tip, we have a lot of stuff lining up, and in the future, we are going to have to get a lot more buckled down with how we do things. And I'm glad that, Shelly and Marty came along. They're really, really helping at least me and Shawn out immensely, just in the stuff they do. We don't have to check on them. We don't have to worry about them doing the job right. They'll do it to the best of their ability and follow through. And I really, really appreciate that. While we're waiting on the caller to call back, this lady that was talking to us about the library, we've actually gotten a few emails from her already about how excited she is The caller just came back on. Let's see.
Hello?
Okay, go ahead. Hey.
Hello.
How you doing? Good to have you on, Mr. Steiger.
Yeah.
We got you on. The switchboard was giving us a little bit of a problem there.
Yeah, it was fighting me.
Yeah, I see that.
Beeping my ear and wouldn't let me on.
Yeah. It does that from time to time. That's true. We really appreciate you being on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
All right. And now that we've got...
To whom am I speaking? Is this Jake?
Yes, sir. This is Jake Bell.
Very good.
Very good. And now that we have you on, I just want to give a little bit of an introduction for anybody that, isn't familiar with you, which would be a shame in this field, in my opinion. And just come in and correct me if I've got anything wrong.
All right.
You're a well-known researcher in the paranormal field and a prolific author of more than 160 books with subjects ranging from poltergeist to the mystery of Atlantis. You've definitely had a big influence on this group with, some work you've done in the Shadow World book with the spirit mimics and the darker side of things that kind of helped us quantify a lot of stuff we experienced. I noticed that you do have your new book in the Shadow World series, as you mentioned it to me at least. And that was the Otherworldly Affairs. Sir.
And it just got.
Is there anything else you got coming down the pipe?
Well, we'll always have something coming up. I say I was delighted to find out that Haunted Tours just named Otherworldly Affairs the #1 paranormal book of 2008. I think I sent you a little message on that. So that's pretty exciting, gratifying.
Yes, sir. I'm sure it deserves it. I mean, especially from me. I just read the Shadow World book here recently, and it was great. I mean, I really enjoyed how thorough it was in those particular things and how it brought in a few things that a lot of people don't consider dark, like the stories you talked about where people would, drive past a restaurant, stop at it, eat at it, drive back through the same town. That restaurant's been gone for 3 years.
That's right. I think you just may have had an experience with one of the spirit mimics, too, according to one of your emails you sent me.
Yes, sir. Me and Shawn actually had an experience at a local hot dog stand where we had a guy come in just kind of off-kilter, didn't really fit the key and pitch of reality.
Right.
He came on in, acted kind of drunk, but if you ever look a drunk person in the eyes, you can see him kind of glaze over and things like that. His eyes, his eyes look completely lucid. He kind of started playing very weird songs you would not expect. I just would never have picked him out of a million people to play Phil Collins' Another Day in Paradise. Very, very strange experience. But him and Shawn kind of had a little telepathy going there at a moment where there were a few, I guess, threats exchanged, actually. And, boy, it was just...
There were threats as much as they were acknowledgments and an activating experience for Shawn, I think. I think this is alerting him. I think those were alerts rather than threats.
Yes, sir, I agree. He really described it as like two generals meeting on the field of battle before things got underway.
Yeah. And he's going to see him again. There's no question about it.
I fully believe it. He actually told me to watch out for that song, Phil Collins' Another Day in Paradise, when we hear that again.
But think of the title of that song, and again, it's giving you a heads up. No, I don't think this is negative, and I don't want to frighten you. I think this is going to, I know you guys are cautious, I know you guys are experienced, but this is going to require all of your reserves. This is going to require you to really practice what you preach. This is going to be a testing, and I have every confidence that you two are going to pass.
Yes, sir. I hope so. I hope we are, we deserve your confidence. Well, to shift gears just a little bit, our roots are not necessarily based in the whole past movement, the paranormal fad that kind of have sprung up in the past few years.
Oh boy.
A lot of my roots kind of extend back into the old school. I came up with that with those Time Life books, which kind of go back into the archives of the original SPR, I guess is like how I like to call them, the Society of Psychical Research in Britain, and namely Harry Price and a few of those other gentlemen. And that being said, what do you think about the paranormal fad of today?
Well, first of all, I urge every young person interested in the field to do exactly what you did. That's exactly what I did. You go back to the works. You go back to Crooks, and you go back to Price. And I think probably from reading an article of mine, that I was really privileged to receive some of Harry Price's original research papers, and have written a couple articles based on that, because I think he meant to share them with the world, but he passed away before he had that opportunity. So I was able to translate those into a number. By translate, I don't mean he didn't write in English. I mean take them from note form to put them in the article form. So, but I am so disappointed, Jake, because the average. Excuse me, no, I don't want to say that. Too many of the young people today who go into the field have only read one or two books, watched a couple episodes of History Channel, and that's it. Now they think they're Ghostbusters. Now they think they're researchers, and you just really have to study the literature of the field. There's an enormous literature that goes way back into the 1800s, and you have to be aware of that.
I completely agree. It's you got to let the people have their fun and have their hobby, I suppose, but it's almost kind of insulting when you spend so much time and so much effort yourself into just acknowledging the history, and a lot of these people just haven't taken the time to even Google search.
Not at all. And I'm sorry, but I do feel insulted sometimes, because it just seems to me that so often they're just making light, of what I've devoted my life to. I mean, as you said, 5, really 6 decades of research. And not that I take it personally, but I just feel insulted for the entire field, like, how dare you say, if you haven't read the literature of the turn of the last century, when so many find, especially in Great Britain, we had some in the United States, but especially in Great Britain, we had so many fine researchers, and we had them in Italy, and we had them in France. And if you aren't aware of their research and their experiments, you really have done a disservice to yourself, not to the field. The field exists, whether you recognize it or not. But just to call yourself a researcher and a ghost hunter and so forth, and you're not aware of the literature, I think is. I mean, you couldn't get away with that in any other field. I mean, you couldn't arrive at a hospital some morning and say, I'm a brain surgeon. I mean, you're going to, and I'm not comparing. Some people are going to say, oh, well, how can you compare? Well, I do take it that seriously. I'm sorry. I do take this field that seriously. And to make light of it by simply reading a couple books and seeing a couple movies and think that, let's go. I mean, to me, it's like, let's play with the Ouija board after the game on Friday night. It's just taking things too light.
Absolutely. And we actually get tons of cases where people will have stuff in their house, right, and they want us to come check it out, take care of it, whatever you may, and you'll be like, well, what have you done to invite any of this in? And they'll look at you funny, and then you ask, well, have you messed with the Ouija board, done any scrying, anything like that? They'll say, well, yeah, my mom had a Ouija board, and or my grandmother was into Wicca, and I read one of her books and tried to do a few of the rituals, and it didn't really work out.
It's just It's not the board itself, of course. That's just cardboard or plastic or whatever. But it's what you open up in your own unconscious. It's the portals to the unknown that you, and unless you've studied, unless you've disciplined, unless you've practiced discernment, you're just not prepared. And even, someone who has read a couple books and seen a couple reality shows, they're not ready. They're not prepared. Just because you watch, Jason and the guys go trooping through the houses, it's not. They cut out. We don't know how much has been cut out of that, because generally, let's face it, ghost research. It's not. You have to be dedicated to it, because you can sit there half a dozen nights and nothing can happen. I mean, it's not like you just walk in a house and it's like an amusement park ride where something pops out at you right away. And you have to know yourself, because sometimes while you're sitting there, you think waiting for something to happen, something is really doing a psychological scan of you and seeing where your weaknesses are, seeing where your strengths are, seeing where you're vulnerable. And that's what, again, the beginning, I won't say amateur and insult anyone with that word, but the beginning researcher hasn't even thought of that. That when he thinks he's going to probe a haunted house, the entities in the house are probing him.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that it only really comes with experience, and you really do need to take, even if you go into the literature, take some sort of mentoring out of the literature and try to be, the best that you can be. And hopefully, if you're very lucky, have someone that's been there and done those things to help teach you and help break you in.
Mm-hmm.
And given that, other than, getting into the literature, do you have any other tips for people just starting out?
Well, I guess, we start with the basic motto that all the philosophers and deep thinkers of history have said: know thyself. That's number one in doing this type of research. I alluded to that earlier, Jake. You have to know yourself, your strengths or your weaknesses, because sometime you're going to come up against an intelligence that is malignant in nature and is going to be probing you from the moment you walk in. That's not going to happen every time. Maybe for some people it'll never happen, but you have to be prepared. God willing, you're never in a serious automobile accident, but you have to drive safely and be prepared for that moment of emergency. Well, it's the same thing in this field. You have to be that well prepared where you really are confident, not overconfident, but you can handle whatever you might encounter. I mean, I learned the hard way. I mean, I had that period where I really thought I was the master of my domain and could explore, and I had the answers. And, well, you may be familiar with the incident. I've mentioned it a number of times, but that was in a house where a number of horrible murders had taken place. And I think the entire house was evil. I think the house hated people. And I made a very flippant remark. I insulted the intelligence, and it blew the solid door off hinges and lifted all six of us into the air and then dropped us. Now, that was a life-altering experience for me, because I had always made a strict separation between ghosts, survival, and I wasn't really certain if there were other intelligences or if those were just products of our imagination. But here I found out then, and I've never forgotten. You never forget that experience when something, an invisible something that you can't see, has that kind of strength, but just as importantly, has that kind of intelligence, the intelligence to get angry and to seek revenge, instant revenge. So, those are things, obviously, I learned because there wasn't anyone to guide me, in the 70s and in the 60s when I was going out exploring. There weren't there weren't anyone riding in the field. I think it was Hans Holzer and Ruth Montgomery and myself, you know. And we kind of learned by on-job training, so to speak.
Absolutely. I've definitely had a few experiences of my own, but nothing quite that shaking. I'll tell you that. I think a few of the people that we have on now that aren't quite as experienced might just have to run to Walmart afterwards, to tell you the truth.
Well, I kind of felt, luckily I had a good team. You know, I had a good friend, a law enforcement officer, a former private detective, a former U.S. Ranger, who was one of my best friends, and he made a point to accompany me on all where we might be running up against something, and we had police and we had some other very balanced people, or I think, you know, the natural impulse would have been to run screaming in terror, you know, but we stood our ground, and we did a little exorcism and tried to bring peace. But I think this was one house that was just sick. I mean, it was just, as I said, you know, you can see a pattern. A couple moved in years ago, and suddenly the man, you know, we'll just say it bluntly, just blew his wife in half with a 12-gauge shotgun and then killed himself. Well, the house sat empty for a while. The next couple moved in. The same thing was replicated. One took place in the garage. One took place in the basement. The same thing. Shot his wife with a 12-gauge and then killed himself. The house sat empty for years. And then some realtor thinking, can I put it back on the market, investigated and found a transient in the basement with his heart cut out. So, I mean, something was definitely going on in that house. I mean, it was a powerful, powerful malignant. The family that was living in there at the present time, I mean, they were just, you know, blood was coming out of the faucets, faces and entities were coming out of the wall. I think we slowed it down, but I think the couple moved out afterwards. They just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, we've had a place around here that was a mental asylum for a number of years, where the people had actually been abused constantly. There were, yes, it's
think of the emotion.
Yeah, and it, you know, I can absolutely relate to that, where, you know, at a certain point, places, you know, can become mentally deranged. Places can actually have the same psychosis as people after a point. I completely believe that.
I believe that, and I say believe because it's something, you know, probably you or I couldn't prove, you know, scientifically, and we will have to say it's a belief. But I do believe that from experience, exactly what you've said, that the house itself becomes psychotic. The house itself actually hates people. I mean, it doesn't want anyone. And, of course, probably there's another intelligence at work. But in other words, if you've read one book and you've watched one History Channel special and you were to lead a group into a house like this with that background, you could probably count on a good number of your group having mental breakdowns. I mean, it would just be too much.
Oh, absolutely. We've seen it. We've seen it firsthand, where, you know, we do quite a lot of work in that field, where we try to go to people's houses and help people the best we can as far as getting rid of dark entities, and that's kind of part of the job. You have to be very strong.
Right.
And people that just aren't prepared for it and are in it for a good time and a ghost hunt can't handle it. They don't have any way to process it.
First of all, it happens to a lot of people who simply did not have this in their worldview. They come from an evangelical background. They come from a strong Roman Catholic background, whatever, or maybe they're total atheists, and they just have not incorporated such phenomena into their worldview. So for those, it comes as a complete shock. Those are the people who are open and have said throughout their lives, well, you know, there could be spirits, there could be ghosts, or maybe not, but I'm open to it. they are the ones who probably most often call you and are able to give you some kind of guidance as to what's happening. The people who have not brought this into their world reality at all, those are the people who can just be shattered.
Right. You have to adopt sort of a true skeptic mind frame, as I call it, where you don't accept any answers. You
Right.
just know where your experience takes you and be completely open to whatever happens. I mean, if you can get to that point in your head, normally you're okay, but I mean, there are some things that'll completely just change you.
Well, and you've got to have a good team with you. I mean, that is one advice that I give. I mean, don't go into these maelstroms of psychic activity alone. I mean, have someone you can trust, have someone you know. I know there are so many individuals who have gone into this field as close friends and left as enemies, and they don't know why. But something happened to them. Something got inside them and distorted their thinking and made them distrust their friends. So you really do have to, again, go back to that ancient advice to know yourself, know your friends, go to the group you can trust. And if you feel that one or the other of you is beginning to slip out, leave the place, refresh yourself, get some distance, get some objectivity again, because it can start taking over.
Absolutely. That's happened to us internally a number of times, just because that, again, comes with the job description. You have to, like you said, be a master of your own thought. You absolutely have to master your own thought and recognize your own thought patterns. If something pops in that you're like, that's not me, you need to be able to kick it out.
Or that's not your friend, one or the other,
Exactly.
And that's when you've got to just say, hey, let's take a break. Let's come outside.
And when someone comes to you and says, hey, are you all right?
Let's go for a hot dog. And what was the name of that place?
Chris's Hot Dogs. Yes, sir. Excellent hot dogs. I don't know about the company.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that leads me to a good question that I get asked quite a lot. And let me ask you, do you feel that there's an imminent danger in this field? Just for the people that are in it solely for the hobbies, that go to the graveyards, eventually, even if they're not looking for it, are they going to run across something dark or malignant or malevolent?
Well, we cannot make all the statements, We can't say this will happen to everybody. But I think everyone who pursues this, and, that's an unfortunate word, hobby. I don't think this is a field that should be a hobby. But let's say, okay, I'll accept that some people enter it as a hobby. They will undoubtedly, I predict, one time be caught off guard. And I get emails from those people all the time who, I love taking pictures in cemeteries, they say. I love taking pictures and exploring, and then all of a sudden they confront something that they just were not prepared for. So I kind of take a dim view, of anyone who, but by the same token, there are historians, there are sociologists, who are looking at these aspects from another point of view. But I've talked to so many of them, even academicians, who are teaching on the college level, who have, and will admit, I doubt if they'd admit at the faculty tea, but who will admit to me that they have encountered things that they just cannot explain, or that they have seen things. Sometimes I am astonished, Jake, at the people who confess to me that they've had experiences. I mean, again, to use the cliche, kind of the last people on earth, you think, would have these experiences and would admit them. Now, as again, they probably won't declare it to family members or, their work associates, but they know I'm not going to laugh at them, and you probably have had the same kind of experience where people, you were amazed, you were surprised that this person would admit to having had a paranormal experience.
Right. That actually happens in our church family a lot, where, once people get you along,
they'll tell you the story.
They'll tell you that story. They might make fun of you when there's a big group, but, and joke with you about it. But afterwards they'll call you on over and say, hey, guess what happened to me?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. That's how it happened.
I wonder if you've heard anything about it. I know I've heard something mentioned about it where there was a lot of scientists, and I think it was the physics field, but they were having encounters with a lot of people that, I believe me and you would call them spirit mimics.
Well, I've been getting a lot of reports. That's very interesting you mentioned that, because everyone's report is important, right? So I'm not saying, and just because someone has a PhD, that doesn't mean that he has any more credence than anyone else. By the same token, it's that measuring stick we were using a moment ago, that we don't really expect this person to admit it. But when the book on when Shadow Word came out with the chapters on spirit mimics, I was really amazed at the number of physicists and other scientists who began to write to me and say, they had these encounters. And I was quite amazed by the wide range in military officers and people serving overseas who have had encounters with, someone who just wasn't quite, like they say, sometimes they seem plastic. Sometimes they seem as though they're, like 95% human, but then after they've been with them a while, there's just a little bit of something that doesn't quite fit. And then they realize, just as you did with the guy in the hot dogs, shop, that there's something else going on. There's something else taking place, another level of consciousness, where they suddenly, if they're fortunate, their mental red flag flies up, and they realize that now this is some kind of period of testing. This is someone's trying to get into me. Someone's trying really to read me. And that's when they, have the good sense to walk out. Or sometimes they think, of course, with my great brain, I can handle this. And they wake up maybe 6 hours later not really knowing where they were or how they got there.
And, speaking of that, to segue into that, when you talk about spirit mimics and you describe them, you can carry a lot over from how people describe the Men in Black phenomenon as well.
Right.
And that's very interesting to me, because it really suggests that maybe all this really is linked. And you get back to the source idea.
I believed and started saying that in the late 60s. And, of course, that was the great era of nuts and bolts ufology. So my colleagues at that time really laughed me off and said, no, this is solid nuts and bolts reality, the aliens from outer space. So now I'm not saying that there isn't life in other worlds, but I think, the great majority of the UFO enigma is totally a multidimensional, interdimensional. We're talking about the same thing. They're linked. And the Men in Black, I've traced them back, and you're probably aware of some of my books, where I've traced them back to the 1600s and before that, that they've been interacting with certain scientists and giving scientists information, and then they're not seen again. The alchemists report, having encounters with black men, burghers, or meaning, well-to-do men appearing and giving them information, telling them how to translate base metals into gold, and then disappearing. And we stop and think and wonder how much of our science has been directed, how much of our progress as a species has been subtly directed by another intelligence.
And this completely leads me into something. It's a bit of a phenomena that's tracked our group for at least a year and a half, wouldn't you say, James?
Pretty close to a year.
About a year and a half. Yes. And this is well, we speculated so it's longer than that, but we've actually nailed it down, I think, to about a year and a half ago, where we realized somewhat what we were dealing with. And Shawn likes to call him Saint Germain. We're not saying that he's Saint Germain, but it's just kind of a fun little nickname because he saw him in New Orleans, I think, for the first time right around the Saint Germain house, and it's always kind of stuck. He's a pretty tall guy. He's always in Victorian dress. That's just what he prefers. He'll come to you on the street as someone completely different and shoot you a little vibe saying, hey, it's me, you know. And
interesting.
He really, really prefers transient cities. And what's interesting enough is a few times when we've really been in, I guess, hot water, so to say, in any of these dark entity cleansings, he will actually show up and help out.
That's very interesting.
Completely confuses us because, you know, as you first come up to him, you treat him much in the same way you would respect, you know, a worthy enemy, to be honest. I mean, he's much the predator because we link him to a lot of these men in the top hat shadow beings that appear when you're asleep and drain you and vanish off. I mean, you've seen that on the internet quite a lot, and it always has struck us as something that he would do.
Interesting. Well, I'd like. I'm writing a book now called Real Vampires, and that's what I'm talking about. You know, the vampires. You know, the bloodsuckers. That's a myth. People living for centuries, that's a romantic myth. But the energy sappers, those are the true vampires, and that's where it all began. I mean, there are people who have fetishes for blood, yes, I'm not denying that. And you go to these various special nightclubs, and I meet kids from time to time who've had their teeth replaced by their dentist, so they have fangs. Okay, that's one aspect. But I'm talking about the real ones, and I think that's be cautious because I think that's the kind of entity that you're encountering.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the first things we've kind of considered about him is we've always really related him to the stories of the vampires. I relate him to the field of alchemy.
Yeah, that makes me feel very, very good about you guys. And I'm not saying this, you know, as flattery to blow up your heads, but I'm very pleased that you were able to make that association because I don't think many people would. And I'm just very pleased that you have that kind of knowledge and that kind of wisdom.
We really appreciate that. I mean, to tell you the truth and to make a little joke, I think a lot of people that would have encountered him today would have thought he was an angel and tried to channel him and talk about UFOs or something.
You're right.
But I mean,
I mean, you're absolutely right, and I have more horror stories of people who have been misled. But you have to really be cautious in this field. When I began, just 20-some years old, an old-timer told me, believe everything and believe nothing. And that's kind of stood me in good stead. You know, be open, but, you know, just have you, this is what I've noticed. This is what John Keel noticed. This is what others of us old-timers began to notice. That the minute we would say, hey, this theory makes sense. This theory, I bet this is the answer. And then all the evidence, all the interviews, everything that we would see, UFOs, Glenn and Black, other entities, spirit entities, would all seem to fit that exact theory. Now, I was fortunate enough, for whatever reason, my true guardian angel, whatever, to slow down and say, wait. Let's just step back. Now, some of my colleagues kept pursuing because they were given the right information. They were given the correct thing. They were going to make an expose. Some of those were publicly ridiculed and never heard from again. They won't even answer emails. They won't answer because they were public humiliated. They were destroyed. And I know that somewhere some malignant entities are laughing their little fannies off because they lured another one by giving them the answer. Look at our folklore. Look at our fairy tales. There's always an entity that appears that has the golden charm, has the answer. And it is the hero who resists the flattery, the blandishments, the senseless clues, and steps back and sees the true reality of what is happening. But I've known some very, very fine and good people who got sucked up in their own ego because they were being told the truth, and they were publicly, emotionally, mentally destroyed.
Right. I mean, well, hey, if J. Allen Hynek can bounce back from the swamp gas thing, you know, what excuse do you have? I mean, really. And you know what I kind of like about the whole UFO thing is I'm not quite as well versed in UFOs as I am, say, you know, paranormal occurrences, things like that. I've just started really, you know, opening my doors to it. I'm kind of young yet to this field, so is Jacques Vallée's comments about them being the great deceivers, and this guy, to my understanding, was very, very well, you know, respected in that field for a very long time, and for him to say that kind of, you know, it makes you think really about the whole phenomenon.
Yeah, as I said, it just, because I think I've written 22 books on UFOs, a couple of them with my wife, who, by the way, worked with J. Allen Hynek until he passed away. She was the one that set up his scene in Close Encounters and so forth. She was kind of like his publicity manager and so forth. And plus, she got to go with him on interviewing people who, and as she told me, you know, Hynek changed completely from the nuts and bolts swamp gas type of guy. He changed to the spiritual or the metaphysical interpretation. So that's something I think you should put in your notebook there. That's not widely known, but you know, my wife worked with him and discussed this at great length. But
I mean, it really shows you. Yeah, it really shows you how good of a guy he was to be able to do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
she
was a great credit.
Right. She just thought the world of him. She thought he was a wonderful man. But I think what really saved me is I came into the field from psychical research. And that's when I began. I was asked by a publisher if I would do a book on UFOs. Okay, fine. I got into it, and as I say, this was the nuts and bolts era, so I kind of wrote the first one, Strangers from the Skies. It came out in perfect timing. It was on the bestseller list in 2 weeks because it came out at the same time as the Michigan swamp gas. So everyone was talking about UFOs. So that was way back in 1966. So, but then I, you know, had other assignments, do another UFO book, do another. And as I got into it, I thought, hey, this is psychical research. And I was talking to contactees, and I thought, this is like interviewing mediums. Only instead of spirit guides, they have space brothers giving them the information. So that's when, you know, about 1968, I started saying, no. But you see, it was still the nuts and bolts area. So I was the great rebel, and you know, don't talk to him because he's gone off on this ghost and paranormal. Well, that's where I'd come from. That was the field I'd come from. But again, it's fascinating, and my wife and I feel that, you know, the phenomena is tied together, and we may never know the complete answer, but we feel it influences every aspect of our lives, whether we acknowledge it or not.
Absolutely. I mean, when I think, after kind of diving into it a little bit, when I think UFOs, I'm really, really reminded of the fairy folk and the fairy circle. Yeah, and about the missing time. I mean, look at Rip Van Winkle.
Exactly. You got it, my friend. And I started talking about this back in the 60s, and everyone said, how dare you? I mean, we can be making contact here, and you're talking about fairies. I'm saying, look, it's exactly the same pattern. But people weren't ready then. People weren't ready. It's like my book now, The Otherworldly Affairs. That came out in 1971, guys. But it was so ahead of its time. And now a book that old comes out and it's voted the #1 book, paranormal book in 2008. And I wrote it in 1971. But now the field is starting to catch up with me.
Yeah. I mean, it's very funny how when you look at the models, I mean, I guess hindsight's 20/20, but if you kind of step back and look at the patterns and everything and how identical they are and everything, it's very hard not to reach that conclusion. I mean, when you're
But it was not popular in the early 60s. I mean, it just because people, I think, desperately hoped that we were making contact. People desperately hoped that the Space Brothers would come and save us from the mess that we've gotten ourselves in on this planet. I think there was that aspect of hope. But then when you have hope, you also have the possibility for deception, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the time period that it all occurred in with the wars, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm only 25, so I can't look at it with a historical eye, but, you had the Cold War starting up. You had a lot of tension after the war. Vietnam, I think, was getting ready to sort of happen in the late 60s. Right. You go back to Roswell and just kind of everything that happened, it's almost like the fairies reinvented themselves for the nuclear age.
That's what happened. In my opinion, that's what happened. Because we never lose contact with our companion species. I think we have a companion species in this earth that we're not completely aware of. There we go to the spirit mimics. I think that's the same entities, guys. The spirit mimics, I think that's the same entities. And this is another one of their guys.
Yeah, it's absolutely very hard to wrap your head around as far as
it is
what the plan is, but wow, it's very hard to imagine what the heck they could be doing.
Yeah,
you look at it.
See, that's my big thing, and I know you know it is. From reading the book, I'm trying to get some kind of clue as to what their agenda might be. What is their agenda? Is it just, as some people say, they don't have emotion, and we have emotion, and they want to feel our emotions? It's got to be deeper than that. I mean what does Puck say in Midsummer's Night Dream? What fools these mortals be. I think that's closer to their attitude toward us. What fools these mortals be. And I think we must become aware. In the Middle Ages, they believed the fairies were the fallen angels. And, that could be some kind of clue to what's going on, too, that there is there is a great struggle for the human soul going on. And we may not, all of us, be aware of that we are the object. We are the prize in what's going on.
That seems to strike way closer to the truth than aliens coming to contact us and save us from ourselves. I mean, it just doesn't, how certain things will have that ring of truth to it that tells you, hey, you might be onto something. As far as our experiences with Saint Germain, he had a complete full range of emotion. I mean, he would actually, to the people that couldn't really tell he was there, he would screw with them big time. He would make weird smells go in front of them, tap them on the shoulder, and just scare the bejesus out of them, just to get a jump out of them. And he thought it was hilarious. So, I mean, there goes out the window where you think, they don't have emotion, they can't appreciate humor. Well, I think it's true of some things. I mean, definitely not everything.
Well, look at the trickster, the whole trickster aspect. That's got to have a sense of humor. But I'm really curious, why how did you come to call this entity, I'll call him Saint Germain, but Saint Germain?
Saint Germain is just kind of what came to us and felt right.
Well, that's got to have a sense of humor. But I'm really curious, how did you come to call this entity, I'll call him Saint Germain, but Saint Germain?
Saint Germain is just kind of what came to us and felt right.
Really? I mean, it just came to you? Do you know the historical Saint Germain?
I have done some research on him and his reputation as an immortal. He's got some legends down in the French Quarter, which are interesting once you start going into that, and his reputation as an alchemist. That's always kind of fascinated me.
Right. Okay.
And you start going into, what you were talking about with things showing up for the alchemist and saying, hey, why don't you do this? That really sounds more like him, to be completely honest. He's been around for a very long time, I can tell you that. He's ancient. Wow. He's been watching us. He's been around watching us, I'm sure, for longer than we realize. I mean, like I said, we've only kind of confirmed it for a year and a half, but
that's
we look back on it happened. Yeah.
Now, there are certain, for lack of a better term, I hate to use the word cult, but groups that believe they channel Saint Germain and he gives them wisdom. Now, you're talking about an entity that's quite different from that, aren't you?
Yes, sir. What's the guy's name? Guy?
Right, Guy Ballard.
Guy Ballard on Mount Shasta. Yes, sir. And you can also go, what I found really cool was I looked into Madame Blavatsky. And you look at who's supposed to bring in the age of 2012. And that is Mr. Saint Germain. So it's all kind of really funny how it works out.
Well, I'm really intrigued, and I hope you guys keep in touch with me on this.
Sure.
This is very interesting.
I'm trying to kind of compile everything myself.
Well, this is the thing that I have hope for today. I mean, I'm going on 73. When I began in this field, the rivalry, this is my case, you can't have any of it. But I find with, the researchers your age, there's more a spirit of cooperation. And we really have to cooperate because, this is like some great cosmic jigsaw puzzle, as I've said, and we're all get a little piece of it. None of us have the complete answer. None of us should feel we have the complete answer. But we've got to work together and try to find out some clues as to what's really going on.
And what's really interesting about that is you go back into the whole ITC movement with Mark Macy and all the people he collaborated with, and what they kept getting was, hey, you guys have to cooperate in order for this to work. There has to be a spirit of cooperation kind of enforced before we can come through and tell you anything. And I completely agree with you that it seems like if you go into the malevolent things, what is the number one goal they're trying to accomplish, and that's to split everybody up.
That's right. And to raise the kinds of emotions that make us vulnerable, that allow them to enter us, that allow them to control us, that allow them to dictate, and we become their puppets then. And I think that's the ultimate design. But, we have to recognize that and say this is real, folks, and we have to continue to present it in an acceptable manner. Not a far out, way that, we won't name names, but the approach that some people take, people who are not perceiving what we're talking about, that's when we look like weirdos and, oh man, that's so far out, I don't want anything to do with it. We have to present it in a logical, straightforward way so that people truly recognize that there is validity to our research.
I completely back that up. When we do speaking engagements and you hit people with this in that sort of manner, you can see their eyes light up because they hit that ring of truth.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds true to them. It makes sense to them. And, this is people you'd never expected, like Baptist ministers.
That's right. That's right.
Housewives, anybody. And if you have truth behind you, you can do a lot of powerful things.
That's right. That's right. Remember what the man from Galilee said, the truth shall make you free.
Absolutely. We've had a bunch of people send us little questions in, and they, want to ask you, a man of your great experience, of course. And a lot of these are stuff, I could address, but nowhere near on the amount of experience you've got. So I'm going to hit you up with a few,
okay,
if you don't mind.
No.
We have a question that says, when getting an EVP, why do spirits only say no more than the 3 words? Or, well, obviously there are more than 3 words sometimes, but, why can't we get sentences?
Many people do, and some people are working now with, and they're quite astonishing, as you might suppose. People sending me EVPs all the time, but some of them now, if we can believe and trust them, they are having conversations. Now, again, I'm going to be cautious on that. But what I've heard so far has been quite impressive with certain researchers, and I won't mention their names now. But they've been making some remarkable progress in this, and it's really pretty eerie. Now, again, I get EVPs that I think are just, it's in the ear of the beholder.
Of course. Yeah. Let me go. It's funny that you mentioned all that research. We have been experimenting with that quite a while. I've been doing the little, shack hacks you can do, and I've had a lot of good reaction with that. What seems to drive that is who's actually using the box, who's driving it, so to speak. You have to have a little bit of mediumistic ability to really get it to go for you, but
I think so.
They're hearing the voices of the people that they're talking to, and that does a lot for me. The voices through.
I don't doubt you. I think you probably do have mediumistic ability, and I think your friend Shawn probably does, and I think you are going to have an increasing amount of encounters, whether it's in the hot dog stand or wherever. But, be cautious, my brother.
Of course. I'm not one to completely buy into everything, but it's very interesting. And I'll tell you what, we actually had one of those, if you know what I mean, that's actually built by the man. He brought that on a cleansing, and I don't know if we're the first, but we had someone actually set it up and see what it would say while we're doing our thing, see if we can get any difference on the box, and it worked absolutely amazingly, to the point where a few of us came away with the idea that maybe this is what this is actually supposed to be used for, at least in our aspect.
Well,
that
I'll be interested in following your research.
We definitely are going to have to get it into more cases, but it's very in the early stages, of course. But
Right. I understand that, and I understand you aren't making any claims. You're simply saying that you're hopeful of making some progress in this area.
Yeah, it's a nice new tool to be able to have. When you're in these situations, it's fun to, not necessarily fun, but it's very interesting to see what comes out of it. And it's very weird. I'll say that. Very, very weird. I believe we had some more questions. That was going to be for us. Oh, wow. If you believe they say, why are the EVPs we hear very weak on recorders, but when you have like a very, very good EVP, why is it prominent? I guess she's more asking, why do you have such a I guess, a valley in between of the very bad ones, and then when you get a very good one, it's very good. Sort of, you know.
There's no in between.
Right. Why is there no in between, I guess is what she's asking.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way of really answering that, is there? I mean, it really depends on so many variables. You know, good paranormal research depends on so many variables. That's what I say. It's not instant the way it appears in the movies. So I'm not sure if I understand the question, but this takes patience. This takes a lot of patience. You're going to have a lot more misses than you are hits, but you know, when you really strike that and have a good, clear voice and a good, clear message, and it's not just scraping and your imagination, you have others verify it, then, you know, you've hit that metaphysical gold.
You know, while I'm thinking about it here, what are your opinions on some of the popularized ghost hunting equipment? You know, you see a lot of these people on the internet. They've set up shops with EMF meters, K2 meters, which needs to go in a trash can, and all kinds of stuff. I mean,
I'm sorry, guys. I'm definitely old school. I mean, I'm definitely old school. I think that most of these devices are just worthless. They're just nonsense. And
Thank you.
Pardon
I'm
me?
going to get this show, and I'm going to actually play it for people when they don't believe me when I say put it in a trash can or put it back in your bag.
No, you know, well, you know, I see the same advertisements and so forth, and I just shake my head and say, you know, it's useless, it's worthless. You have to rely on just the old-fashioned research. I mean, this is not CSI for spirits. You know, you still have to do the research, the work, the finding out, you know, be open. I think the tape recorder can be valuable. I think the camera can be valuable. But in terms of all these others, I hear about guys, well, I got this reading and I got that reading. You know, any orthodox scientist is going to say, well, of course you did, fool, because you were near a power line. So, I mean, that's not going to demonstrate anything. And I don't mean to insult anybody. And someone's going to write in and call in and say, oh, I have mastered this technique and I'm the Wizard of Oz. Well, maybe you are, and that's fine, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm old school.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much.
I think that well done documentation is worth 1,000 EMF meters.
A million.
Yeah.
I need a dime.
Wow. Anything you have to actually get a dime
to have it work
and stick in the power part to have it work? Oh my.
Wow.
That's a wasted $50. But it's, you know, and another question, when did empirical evidence, when did people observing something as part of a scientific program go completely out of style? I mean, if you've noticed, what's been the popular theory for a long time in the paranormal field is, you know, well, we don't take any personal experiences into account when we do our evidence. Why not? You know, what are you taking into account, by God, if you're not taking that into account?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, where does all science begin? With empirical evidence. And then it may be fine-tuned and we come up with our little devices and so forth. But in this field, we have empirical evidence, and we must totally document and flesh it out and flush it out completely. And that's what we stand on. And it's not going to convince everyone. You know, I think it's so astonishing that, you know, some of the people who were the greatest skeptics, I'm not saying in this field, I'm saying people I've known in my life, you know, police officers and so forth, who were totally skeptical, when they've had their experience, when they've had an experience, then, of course, they can't be dissuaded otherwise. And they develop the same attitude, which doesn't encourage research, of course, but you hear this over and over and over. I don't care what anyone believes because I know what I saw. I know what I experienced, and I know what it's real. I'm an intelligent person. I carefully observe things. I know what's in the sky. I know what's in my house, and I know what I saw. And you see people becoming very defensive. I'm amused that some of the people that were the most skeptical and personally and professionally attacked me are now very defensive about their own experiences. And somehow I don't understand, you see.
I agree. I mean, I'll say this. There are still people on this planet that are absolutely convinced that AIDS and the Holocaust does not exist.
That's
Never
right.
happened.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, there you go.
So where do you know, if they don't believe in ghosts, where do we go? No, again, I've never had that missionary impulse. I simply present the evidence for people to decide and evaluate for themselves. I'm not trying to change anyone's belief. I think this is exciting. I think it's the most exciting research in the world. So I just present things that have excited me, and I hope that other people will be excited. But I'm not trying to convert anyone. I'm not trying to convince anyone, because I know that truly, awareness comes from self-revelation. Awareness comes from the epiphanies that we experience as individuals. And I can't replicate those. Michael Persinger thinks he can replicate some of those in the laboratory. Maybe he can replicate an imitation, but it's just there are some flowers now that are so beautiful that they are wonderful imitations of real flowers, but they aren't real flowers. We can imitate this phenomena, but it's not the same. It's not the same as actually experiencing it.
Yeah, in my opinion, the only thing that he's proving with doing that is that, those experiences are the way those experiences are handled by your human brain, not necessarily that they don't happen, but, hey, here's what triggers you to, interpret the data thus.
Right.
Not necessarily that they don't exist completely. Like, it'd be like saying, well, I can replicate the smell of a flower, but, that means all flowers don't exist. Yeah.
It's still not the flower.
Exactly. It's a faulty logic.
Well, what photography and all of the various Photoshop, what's that done to UFO research, and what it's done to some paranormal research. I mean, some of the incredible photographs, that we get of UFOs, and we know they're photoshopped, and that's really muddying the waters. And I know people get their jollies and get off on doing that, but it's certainly not doing us a favor. And sometimes you find someone in the field, who wants to prove something and how good he is at faking something. That's not helping us. That's not helping us at all. So that's something else we're put up with now. I mean, when I first started, if someone had a really good picture of a ghost, it was a good picture of a ghost. Now I have to, and what I do, I send to 3 different photographic experts. And they're not disbelievers. They would like to find the truth, but they are really hard-nosed. And I send everything I get, even though some of them look so good, but then they will find some flaw. And a couple times, some people have really tried to trick me, with, and it even kind of, the experts will say, this was really good, but it's not real. And that doesn't help research either, but it's just another thorn in the flesh that we have to put up with.
Unfortunately, like we've said, it comes with the job. It's one of those things.
Yeah,
and speaking of comes with the job, we actually had somebody ask the question, once you experience a malevolent or malignant spirit in such a way that it completely acknowledges you, like you say, when you were picked up and dropped, and you have that moment of awareness of each other, do you think you are kind of marked thereafter to come across these things a little more often? Cause sort of, when you stare into the abyss looks back, sort of a deal.
That's an interesting question. And I can say, I think I've been marked since I was a little child, but it's not malignantly. We grew up in a home that was built on the old stagecoach stop, and we heard horses and wagons pull up from time to time. And my little sister and I are both insomniacs because all the times we were awakened by strange entities coming and peering and taking our covers off and staring at us and so forth. And but I felt that they didn't hurt me, they were just watching me. That's what led me to be overconfident the time when I was picked up, because I'm not like the ghost whisperer, don't misunderstand, but seeing entities, and it's not something I encourage, and it's not something I try to do, but I guess it's the same with my wife. People have concluded that we probably attract ghosts. Well, it's not who attracts ghosts. It's who attracts people. It's people who are open-minded, who try to think the best of people, who try to be kind, who try to be generous in their thoughts to other people. So in that sense, I feel that I attract good entities, but I never am deceived. I never acknowledge. I've never... When I was just a kid, I walked into spiritualist camp, and the person who was conducting the seance stopped the seance and pointed at me and said, "Here comes one who could be the greatest medium of our time." I didn't want that. I don't want to be a medium. I really don't like to see these things all the time, but they've never hurt me. And again, I think an openness and a positive attitude and an attitude of goodwill toward all things visible and invisible, I think has been a blessing for me, and it's been what has really guided my life. So I recognize that I let my guard down, and I did receive the brunt of malignant attack, but I do not feel touched in any way by that other than the physical punch that I got. And I certainly have had my guard up and accentuated and powered ever since.
Absolutely. It's a life-changing event. I understand. I mean, it's almost an obligation as soon as you get into this field and you start interacting with people and helping them. It's an obligation for yourself to walk in.
You've hit it exactly. This field is about helping people, and we have an obligation as those who, for whatever reason, have a certain sensitivity. Let's call it that, a certain sensitivity. Exactly. Then we have an obligation to help others, and without pay, and sometimes that's hard because bills have to be paid. But
I agree.
I've never charged for an investigation, but I do charge. I do charge for the books. We have to pay the bills.
I'm going to start writing some books.
Yeah, you better.
Yeah, it is hard. But I've always believed that if you're there to help people and you're in the right place, God will make a way for you. If you need to be there, you will be there.
That's our belief.
Yes, sir.
You share our belief.
Yeah. You just have to get in for the right things. And I've offended, I don't know how many people, just being upfront about it and saying, if you're not in this field to help people, and all you want to do is gather evidence and trade it around like baseball cards, absolutely get out. We do not need you.
Amen.
And I mean, it's a very hard-nosed approach, but after you see it so many times, it's hard not to react in sort of that way. And we've been told numerous times we're too religious about it. We're too weird. Yeah.
Well, it's a hard-nosed approach, but it's the only honest one.
I agree. And, what are you if you're not honest, in my opinion?
That's right. You have only your integrity. You have only the value of your name. Like I said, I'm old school. I'm old school that way, too. Integrity and the value of my word and my name mean so much to me, and I will not take that lightly.
And I absolutely try to, with this team and the people in it, try to live up to that, great standard of being old school. Because, if I read something Mr. Crooks has put down, or Dr. Crooks, I'm sorry, he was a chemist, correct?
Right.
If I read something that he put down and said, hey, this is what I've experienced, this is what it is, I have no problem believing that that's the way it was. I don't have...
He was a brilliant scientist. I mean,
absolutely.
Created the X-ray tube. I mean, on and on and on and on. This is the quality of individuals who are doing research. And that's why I am so dismayed, guys, when young people come up to me and they've never heard of these individuals. They've never read anything by them. I mean, that's just so disappointing.
You really have to remember who these people in the Society of Psychical Research were. I mean, I think there was at least, if I'm not mistaken, very, very high political figures in it. I mean, just really esteemed people. I want to say almost
very esteemed.
Wasn't there a prime minister that actually was in the group before he became or after he became a prime minister?
Yes, there was, and there were many other top scientists. You can just go on and on and on. Sherry and I did an encyclopedia of the strange and unusual, and we have little bios of each of those individuals. And if nothing else, if you don't read their original works, I hope that. And this was done. We were so happy with this. This was done for junior high schools. I mean, this was an educational encyclopedia company that contacted us to do a 3-volume encyclopedia set on the strange and the unexplained, and we were able to really go into depth on this. And we're just delighted with that work. I wish it wasn't so expensive. I don't know. I think it sells for like $200 or $300. I wish it sold for $10 so everyone could have it.
I mean, I completely agree. I was actually looking it up today because I was thinking of getting it as a sort of a textbook for us to use in the group when we teach classes.
That'd be great.
It's a very comprehensive work for anybody listening, and it is completely worth the money you put into it. I've had the pleasure of, being able to page through it. I obviously couldn't read all of it in one sitting, but, it's a very great work. But
thank you. Thank you.
If you make it through that, you have earned at least the right to be mentored by somebody because you've shown that type of enthusiasm about it and what you want to know. You're not, back in the old days we had very esteemed scientists, things like that, and these days we got plumbers. And it makes my heart heavy.
And there's nothing wrong with plumbers.
But I mean,
I got your meaning. I think most people do. I think most people got your meaning.
You kind of have to look at where the popularity ends and where the actual field is there, because there's a hokey. We're going to do a hobby and get some K2 meters and go pretend like we're the ghost whisperer and everybody's a psychic, and at a point.
I think the interesting thing about the ghost whisperer is it really took the place of Touched by an Angel. I mean, you can see the same pattern, and there's always the heartbreaking conclusion, and you kind of messed up, as someone goes into the light. And I think it can be a fine inspirational program, but it certainly misleads people as to what true mediumship really is and the type of exchange and encounter and dialogue that can exist. It's just not way. It's impressions and feelings, maybe snatches of words and so forth. But if it I don't know what. I mean, it would. I think someone like Melinda would probably go insane by the time she was through high school if she really did interact to that degree with the spirit world.
I mean,
you've got to learn to shut it out. You have to learn to shut it out. You know,
that's your first lesson. Yeah.
We were looking at a home. We lived in Arizona, and we were looking at a home up north. And my wife and I, we were looking around in the real estate and so forth. And each of us, we were individually. First, I came into the bathroom, I think, and I said, oh no, because I saw blood and I saw someone lying there, and I got out of there. And then Sherry went in there, and she got the same impression. And so the realtor said, how do you like the home? And we said, the home is lovely, but we can't live with the man who committed suicide in the bathroom. And she just turned white. She just turned white and said, who told you that? How did you know that? You're strangers to this town. And we said, he told us that. And we got out of there, But you can't explain that, to real estate agents very often.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that. I know at least me and Shawn and a few other members have, once you get kind of used to that feeling of what it's like to be there, and you kind of know what to look for, you'll go into, like your friend's house and be like, oh, okay, I might have to cut this visit short. It does kind of extend into your life.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much so.
Now, again, someone would say, well, if you can see these things, and why would that bother you? Well, how would you like it getting up every night to go to the bathroom and see a guy bleeding there? It's just, you have to measure your life in certain considered steps, I think. And I think you have to learn to put auras and shields of protection light around you at all times. I think, prayer is so important. The attitude of prayer, and to surround ourselves with this protective shield at all times. I mean, it always has to be there because, if you have a certain sensitivity, you're being bombarded almost ceaselessly.
Hey, you absolutely have to walk in the light every day.
Walk in the light.
Yes, sir. We actually just had another question that somebody asked. What do you think the age limit should be for? They just said, what do you think?
The age limit. What would you think, Mr. Steiger, that the age of paranormal investigators should start out at?
I'm assuming they mean for field work.
Oh boy, that's a good question. I really think a certain maturity has to be involved.
I agree.
I know there are unusual, and we always have the prodigies. I think that one should certainly be of age, at least 18, I think, before you seriously begin research. And there are sensitive individuals, but I think you really have to have some kind of balance there. I think it's very hard to put an age because we're all individuals, but I really think you have to have had time to discover who you are and your vulnerable spots and your parts of strength. Now, some people won't have that until they're 30, but I think it's very difficult to just give an age, but I think it depends on one's own maturity scale, but it has to be emotional age as well as physical and mental age.
Definitely. We've made a point that we are going to have to meet you and get to know you before we allow you to be with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a lot of groups that'll be like, sure, we'll meet you at the BP. Let's go to the graveyard. But, you can't. You have to be a lot more discerning than that because you have to think about, well, who is this person I'm letting in this other person's house on my credit?
That's right. It has to be judged individually. You're absolutely right in doing the individual interviews because, as I said, some people aren't mature at 40, so it has to be a certain maturity, emotional, intellectual, all levels, to be able to take this work, because people can be bombarded. They can have vulnerable areas. They can have phobias. They can have phobias that malevolent entities can use against them. All of these things have to be taken into consideration.
We're getting kind of close to having to go off, unfortunately, and I wanted to take a little time and ask you one more question.
Okay.
Before we leave, and I'll let you kind of, do whatever you want. First, I want to make a statement and tell you to please thank Sherry for us, for letting you come on.
I will.
I know how things can be. And what, if you're going to give a parting word to people who are in this field, they want to become serious, they just don't have that ability yet, what would you like them to take out of this? What would you say to them?
Well, once again, I would say study, study, study. Learn self-discipline. Learn discernment. Now, by discernment, we mean the ability to evaluate things that are happening around you. And learn to walk in the light, as we were saying, and that is an attitude. That is an attitude of not just a cocky kind of self-confidence, but it's an attitude of knowing what your mission is, that you do have a mission to perform on earth, and it is helping others. That's what it's all about, is helping others to find the path and to walk. And if you have someone who is up against a poltergeist that is very violent and working, what appears to be an evil entity, you have to have the calm, you have to have the confidence to enter that situation and restore it to normalcy, restore it to balance. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to know yourself, study, self-discipline, and the powers of discernment.
Absolutely couldn't have said it better myself. And before we are about to sign off here, is there anything you want to mention as far as your website or anything like that?
Thank you. I'd like to mention our website. I'd like to invite people to visit it. We have a lot of information I think they'll find valuable, and it keeps people up with what we're doing, up to date with what we're doing. So that's very simple, www.Brad, B-R-A-D, and, spell out and, A-N-D, Sherry, SHERRY.com.
All right. I just really want to thank you for taking the time out to speak to us. And I completely appreciate it. Personally, I know this is horrible, but I don't care if anyone else enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Well, let's hope a few people enjoyed it.
Yes, sir, please. But hopefully we might be able to talk to you again. I'll definitely keep in contact.
That would be great, and please do keep in touch. I'm really interested and curious about your research, and it does seem as though you're approaching it in a very balanced way, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And on that, I'll give you a good night, Mr. Steiger.
Okay, good night, guys.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show, guys. Again, you can check us out at www.southernparanormalresearchers.org, where we got DVDs and T-shirts and all that kind of material stuff on sale, because I guess we need to write some books and get some funds. Shawn, I guess, needs to write his Crossroads book finally. And you can always email us at southernparanormalresearchers@yahoo.com or contact us via phone, 334-695-7748. And unfortunately, guys, and remember the MySpace. Yeah. Unfortunately, guys, I'm not a Methodist, so I'm not going to end it with John Wesley's rule. I'm just going to say peace and good night.